Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Lauren Vilar. I am a licensed clinical social worker and licensed clinical addiction specialist. I'm the owner of LMV Counseling, a mental health group counseling practice in Wilmington, North Carolina, and providing telehealth services to those around the state of North Carolina. I am also the owner of the sister company of LMV Counseling called Go Inward, and that is the arm that I provide ketamine assisted therapy through. So today we are going to be exploring ketamine assisted therapy, learning a little bit about it and getting familiar with this space. And as I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I definitely want to be able to provide as much information as I can. This is a very dense topic that I feel passionate about. So for those of you who are joining us, you can go ahead and turn your camera off, and you can turn your microphone off if possible. And then at the end, if you guys want to come back on when we're done recording, we can have a little bit of a chat that way. But I'll kind of get started. So this is our overview today. Again, this is just very high level, learning a little bit about what ketamine assisted therapy is. So the first, what is it? We first have to define it and know what ketamine assisted therapy is. The second is I will briefly be going over the different phases of ketamine assisted therapy and what that looks like. And then the third is going to be who's a good fit. And I've got a little bit more information on each of these sections that we can go a little bit more in depth in. First, we're going to just start with what is ketamine assisted therapy. Ketamine assisted therapy, combining ketamine and the therapy, working together to create a period of profound healing where you can have lasting changes. So ketamine is a medication that is technically a dissociative anesthetic, meaning that when you take it, you feel a little bit separate from your body, and you can have a psychedelic experience. So visuals or sensations that are not normally something you would experience in your waking consciousness. The medicine helps to open up a door of time where you can begin to explore what you need to change in your life and how you can improve your mental health. This varies from traditional just ketamine therapy. Ketamine therapy is just receiving the medication of ketamine to help reduce symptoms. The difference is this is a medical model. This is our typical medical model that we're used to in the United States, which is take a medication and then feel better, or take a medication and hopefully have a reduction of symptoms. Whereas ketamine assisted therapy is different. It's take a medication in order to open up a period of time of learning and understanding about oneself to improve your mental health. Ketamine has the ability to alter consciousness and promote neuroplasticity to create a deeper emotional content and explore difficult issues with greater openness. Meaning that ketamine is going to create neuroplasticity, a time where we are more open to change. The older we get, the more entrenched in our ways that we are, because we have really connected neural pathways that we've repeated over and over and over again. And it can feel like you're in a rut and you're stuck. It's hard to get out of that. Ketamine can help you get out of that rut. And then the therapy helps you figure out where you want to go with that and where you want to make changes. Ketamine can also help to decrease the fear a little bit and fear and anxiety about what kinds of changes you want to make. So if we're looking at the ketamine assisted therapy, we're working more holistically with a multidisciplinary approach. So I am the therapist, I work with my client, but I also have conversations with the physician who prescribes the ketamine. And oftentimes I'm having conversations with a client's therapist that they're working with regularly. Ketamine can be an adjunct and a really wonderful way to add on to existing therapy. They have a primary therapist they're working with, maybe they've been seeing for years, and they've been referred to ketamine assisted therapy to help them get through a stuck point or possibly process some trauma or things that they've been through that just traditional talk therapy isn't cutting it anymore. I also talk to physicians, so primary care physicians, who sometimes will be working with folks regularly, and they want to make sure that this is a treatment that's going to be okay for them. It takes a lot of coordination between care to help that client be in a place where they're going to be healthy, open, and ready for this type of treatment in their life. So the CAP process, there are three main steps, phases in ketamine assisted therapy. The first phase is preparation. The second is the psychedelic experience or the medicine session. And then the third is integration. Preparation is the first phase where you're going to come in, have an assessment, and talk a little bit about whether this is a good fit in your life at this point. Just because it may not be a good fit now doesn't mean that later on down the road it might not be a good fit for you. But it's going to, I'm going to have questions with you, or the therapist, the ketamine assisted therapist is going to have questions with you about what your hopes are for this type of treatment, what kind of supports you already have in your life. We're going to talk a little bit about your own previous psychedelic experiences or familiarity with non-ordinary states of consciousness, and just exploring that a little bit to see if this is something that's going to be a fit. After that assessment, if that is something that feels like it is a fit for both the client and the therapist, then we move forward with a referral to the physician that I work with to be able to have a medicine is completed, and we've got a thumbs up from the therapy, yes, we can move forward. We've got a thumbs up from the physician, yes, we can move forward. That's when we begin the preparation sessions. Preparation sessions are focused on and aimed on helping the person understand what it's like to enter into the medicine space and this change process. This therapy is different than traditional talk therapy. It's going to include information about non-ordinary states of consciousness. So being in an altered state, something that many people aren't familiar with unless they've utilized psychedelics before in their life or had some other non-ordinary states. We're going to be talking about support that you're going to receive, talking about how change happens during this process. Change happens and occurs differently in ketamine assisted therapy than it does in traditional talk therapy. In traditional talk therapy, we're relying on interventions and skills by the therapist, the relationship with the therapist, to help move that forward. Well, ketamine is going to help be the tool that facilitates some of that change. And a lot of the change is going to happen outside of the therapy room for that individual person. Preparation sessions are going to vary for how long they are. Typically, the very shortest is 2 sessions. The longest can be however long that individual needs. If someone is coming to work with ketamine and they've got a really long history of trauma, there might be a lot of fear built up for them about this particular treatment. And when we have a lot of fear going into a psychedelic space, that can sometimes be really challenging for the individual. So we're working more one-on-one with that and helping them learn how to enter into the psychedelic experience open and curious. The second phase is that psychedelic experience, is the medicine session. The medicine session is where you actually take the medicine and you are able to begin to experience a dissociative state, a psychedelic state. Now, this is a very inward experience. I think that's one of the more biggest misconceptions that I hear from folks, is that they're expecting they're going to have ketamine and then have talk therapy during that. And that's not the case. At the doses for most people having a psychedelic experience, it's going to be eye mask on, earphones on, and having an inward experience where you're just exploring what is coming up in the unconscious and learning a little bit about yourself. Then integration happens. Typically, means an appointment with your therapist 24 to 48 hours after the medicine session. That's because it is the period of greatest neuroplasticity where you are just more open to change. You are more open to see things differently, to learning things about yourself. You're less reactive. And that's where we want to work together and partner to begin to make change. This is in a circle here with preparation, the psychedelic experience, and integration, because although I said that there are 3 phases, like preparation sessions, after you have a medicine session, you work with integration, but then we have repeated doses of ketamine normally. We don't typically do just one. So you're preparing on your own, the individual's preparing on their own to come back for the next medicine session. So it's an ongoing process. So this is a little bit more depth of what is in each phase. I mentioned for preparation, we have the assessment for client readiness, the rapport building. Of course, if you've got somebody coming in and meeting you for the first time, you want to be able to have a relationship with them and learn a little bit about them. Same thing for the therapist. Rolling informed consent. So with this work, it's really important that the client, the individual who is coming to this, feels ready and prepared and knows what they're going into. I mean, this is a new treatment for a lot of folks. They've never heard of this before. So at every opportunity, at every session, we're asking for permission, inviting questions about, is this what you want to do? Is this what you want to do moving forward? And again, we're revisiting that at the medicine session. Are you interested in taking the medicine today? We're not just assuming that the individual is ready at every single stage because we got informed consent, meaning we got a yes, I want to move forward at the very beginning. There's a lot of psychoeducation. So this is part of psychoeducation. You guys are actually all part of preparation right now. It's preparing and learning about what ketamine assisted therapy is. Oftentimes, this education happens before someone even comes to ketamine assisted therapy. They have likely read things, they've seen news articles or stuff on social media. Perhaps they've perused a website about this information, and they have information coming in even before the therapist brings any information to that. So it is a long process of learning about what this treatment is and really being open and ready for this. We talk about set and setting, which is a big piece of any type of psychedelic work. Set is the mindset that you have going into the medicine space, and the setting is the environment that you're in. Both can play a very large role in your experience and what you get out of it. We have intention setting, and intention is not setting a goal per se for the treatment, but something that you can rely on to revisit throughout this whole treatment process. So show me what it's like to feel patience might be an example. That can help you move through this process, connected to you being able to get to the goal that you want, that you can always anchor back to. We talk about use of touch. Use of touch is always non-sexual in nature. It is physical touch during the medicine session that can help provide support for someone who's going through a challenging situation. There can be some meaningful and challenging experiences that come up in a psychedelic space. And sometimes having a hand to hold or a hand on the shoulder can be very comforting and grounding for an individual who's in that space. And we talk a lot about music choices. Music is really important in this work. It can help carry through and bring more meaning to the experience. Then we've got the dosing. So we do day of vitals. The individual takes their own blood pressure. That is one big thing that we'll get to in a minute. Flight instructions. So before you take off, you get some kind of flight instructions and reminders about how to navigate this medicine space and reconnecting to some of the reasons why you started this experience and why you started this treatment. We have an invocation, so a reading just to enter into that space, and a reminder of the psychological support. So the presence of the therapist during the medicine session is providing mostly psychological support. Yes, there's physical support, but holding space and allowing that individual to feel safe and open during the medicine experience. If anything comes up for them during the medicine experience, as I mentioned, use of touch, the therapist is there to hold a hand and is also there to be a scribe and write down anything that comes up. There might be some things that come up for people that they want to talk about or remember and not forget. It might feel really important. And so the therapist is there to write that down, to revisit an integration. There's a safety and supportive touch. Like I mentioned, the handhold. Safety touch is just making sure that we're positioning the body in a way that is safe for that individual. And long tail support. So the long tail is after the medicine has subsided, it's starting to metabolize out through your body. It is still on board, but the individual can talk a little bit more, may feel a little bit more open and vulnerable. And this is where we actually can start to provide some integration. So as they're coming back into the room, the person might take their earphones off, take the eye mask off, and begin to share a little bit about what they saw or revelations that are coming up for them. The goal here is not to process a lot of information. It's to excavate. We are in a period and a moment where you are having so much content come up for you. So we're excavating, we're exploring, not making sense of any of it yet, just bringing out as much information as we can. And then the third phase is integration. I mentioned that that's 24 to 48 hours after the medicine. One of the goals of integration is to go from a state to a trait, meaning the state that you are in, feeling relaxed or open and understanding new things about yourself. How do we begin to shift from just that experience to a trait where that can be moving you in the direction of who you are, who you want to become, and how you want to incorporate that in your life? We can incorporate complementary modalities. And this doesn't have to be just therapy. Therapy is great and everything, but there's a lot of things outside of therapy that help us feel very connected and grounded. That can mean time in nature. That can be journaling, yoga, other meditation practices. It can be whatever the individual feels is important for them and the changes that they want to see. And I can't define that for them. No therapist can. It's about what they need in their lives. It might be having a connection with greater spirituality. It might be they're just taking a moment to go to a bookshop and reading books and taking time away from screens. It's the individual person's decision, but we certainly talk about what are these complementary things that you're going to be adding to your integration. We want to create change utilizing that neuroplasticity, as I mentioned. And then this process, healing is not linear. The ketamine comes in repeated doses, so not just one. Typically for individual, we start with 6 medicine sessions, and it's not going to go from A to B to C to D to E. Session A is going to give you some information. Session B is going to give you some information. And it may not be until farther along down the line that the individual can start to make sense of that or connect them or understand what that means. Healing is not linear. And part of this process is just getting comfortable with that and understanding that these are little jewels that we're finding along the way to make sense of where you want to go. We also have cumulative changes. So ketamine picks up steam with the repeated doses, meaning that the repeated doses can give greater and greater antidepressant effects as we go. Okay, so let's talk about those who might be a good fit for ketamine assisted therapy. Now, my disclaimer is this is not for, just because you may not be on here does not mean that you're a good candidate. It is so nuanced, but these are just some generalities. The clinical indications, typically research is focused on treatment-resistant depression. So those are individuals who have struggled with depression for a while and have tried different medications, typically at least 2 medications, antidepressant medications, and not felt relief from those. A lot of research is focused in that area. And then we've got PTSD, OCD, suicidality. So those who struggle with thoughts of suicide or thoughts of wanting to no longer be around or harm themselves, ketamine can assist with reducing some of those thoughts or some of these sting, the charge of that suicidal ideation. I put depression on here separate from treatment-resistant depression Because many folks actually have started to utilize ketamine assisted therapy as a first line treatment for depression instead of having to wait to have 2 failed antidepressant trials, meaning they've tried these 2 medications, they didn't experience symptom relief in their lives. Some people are beginning to come to ketamine as the first line of treatment. Lots of folks are interested in this medication because you don't have to take it every day. In fact, you don't want to take it every day. It's not meant for every day. It is meant to come in for a period of time to help you have some symptom relief and create some changes in your life. It's not an everyday pill that you have to take. Anxiety can be relieved with this medication. It helps turn down the ruminations, helps decrease that reactivity that we have between a trigger and reacting to something. In that middle, that pause, that space can become a little bit longer, a little bit more breathy, and help individuals get through that. And substance use disorders. So there's an asterisk here because for those who are actively using substances in a way that they can no longer control or have had it take over their life, this might not be a fit for them right now. Something about this treatment is you have to abstain, and it is recommended to abstain from alcohol, benzodiazepines, and opioids for 24 hours before and 24 hours after. We can even extend that to 48 hours before and 48 hours after the medication. So if you can't abstain during that time because you might go into withdrawal or because you might have some problems in your life or in your body if you abstain, then we need to be in a place of making sure that we get help for that first before seeking this type of treatment. When we look at contraindications, meaning those who might have some medical issues going on that might not work with this, it's going to be hypertension. Ketamine does increase your blood pressure during the medicine experience, and we cannot start with hypertension and then go farther up into that blood pressure. You're going to have a hypertensive crisis. We don't want to have a medical crisis while you're experiencing ketamine. So for folks, sometimes they have to visit their physician and have conversations about getting their hypertension and their health in a place where they are ready to move forward with this. So that may mean that some individuals receive medication for their hypertension before moving forward. The second one is current mania, meaning if you have a history of bipolar disorder and you've had a manic state, if an individual is in a manic state and high energy, high productivity, high decreased need for sleep, this is a very familiar experience for those who have been diagnosed with bipolar before. If you're in a current manic state, it's not a good idea to engage in ketamine therapy right now. It could actually make that worse. The third one is current or history of psychosis. Psychosis means hallucinations or delusions, meaning you're either seeing or experiencing things that perhaps aren't there. We don't want to enter in any psychedelics that might exacerbate and make worse some of the psychosis that you've had already or have had in the past. Pregnancy is another contraindication. Glaucoma or recent eye surgery, intracranial pressure. Sleep apnea is a big one. So for folks, again, just like for hypertension, they might need to have a sleep study or get their sleep in a place where it is controlled and they're sleeping better before they come to this treatment. And then I mentioned the active substance use disorder. You do need to abstain from these medications. Some considerations about this. Again, this is not a no, this is just a consideration. Is family history of psychosis. So if your biological parents have a history of any hallucinations or delusions, this is a conversation about whether this is a good fit for you or not. We don't want to trigger any psychosis that may happen for you or even anxieties about potential psychosis coming up. We want to assess and talk about current level of support outside of therapy. Oftentimes the evening or the next day after taking ketamine, you can feel very open and some folks really want to talk. And it's important for a lot of people to have someone to talk to, a trusted individual outside of therapy they can talk to what's coming up for them and begin to process some of that outside of therapy. The other thing is a willingness to participate in integration. Before I mentioned the difference between ketamine therapy and ketamine assisted therapy. This is the assisted therapy piece, which means the integration is really important. We gotta have the willingness to participate in the therapy for this type of treatment. And then the ability to follow through with the treatment protocol. The schedule and the cost are very important. If an individual is not able to consistently show up for their medicine sessions or their integration sessions, it could do them some harm if we're really opening up a period of time and then something happens and they don't have the support from the therapy that they need. So that's very important to consider. I have one more slide, but it's not going through it, so that's okay. But it looks like we're about at 30 minutes, which is what I was hoping to be able to share. And I am going to go ahead and end the recording now. And that will give us the opportunity to really address the questions in the chat and be able to have some greater conversation.